Hey guys, it's Cameron, my review for the first season of Tuca and Bertie. And what Tuca and Bertie is essentially about is we center on these two best friends, and they've been living together for a long time, but Bertie is now moving in with her boyfriend, and Tuca is now living next door to her, basically, and so they have to deal with that. And the rest of the season is basically seeing the various adventures in their life, the struggles they deal with, and if they can still maintain that friendship, and that's really all I'm gonna say. So Tuca and Bertie overall, I was very excited for this show, and honestly, how could I not be? I mean, just hearing that the animators of BoJack Horseman are going to tackle another show, and it's going to be on Netflix, and it's going to be TV mature, and it's going to be really weird. I mean, I couldn't be more happy for that because I think BoJack Horseman is one of the best animated shows ever created, and, you know, the more the better, honestly. So I was very excited to see what this show would bring to the table, seeing Tiffany Haddish and Ali Wong on board, two actresses that I think are definitely a lot of fun. I was very excited to see how the show would turn out, and I will say this right now. Is this show as masterful as BoJack Horseman? No, it's not, but it's not trying to be. Tuca and Bertie is a very fun and enjoyable animated series overall that I definitely had a very good time with, and we're just getting into right now, starting off with the voice cast. And right off the bat, that is definitely one of my favorite things about the show. The entire voice cast just does some great work. Let's first talk about Tiffany Haddish, though, as Tuca, who, honestly, I can't see anyone else playing this character. I mean, Haddish is someone who has been very on and off for me, but this is exactly the kind of character that she needed. Tuca is obnoxious, and yes, she is very much a loudmouth, and she is annoying, but there is a reason for that. She is someone who has dealt with issues with alcoholism and things like that, and you really do see how she feigns this very sort of fun, carefree personality, but behind that, there is a much darker sort of exterior, and I think overall, Haddish just did such a great job voicing this character. You really do feel for Tuca, but she also can be a lot of fun, and I think overall, she was just really great here. I mean, right from the first episode, I pretty much fell in love with her character, and I really love where they ended up taking her here. I thought she did such a great job. And the same goes for Ali Wong as Bertie, who is also fantastic here. Bertie is definitely the more, the character that has it together more. She is really trying to settle down. You know, she's got a steady job and things like that. And I thought she did such a great job. She definitely does have moments where, you know, she's freaking out and things like that. But for the most part, this is a role that is a little more complicated because of how much Bertie does have to hold back. And Wong does a really great job with this character. And Haddish and Wong's chemistry, I mean, it just completely anchors the show. These two work so well together. They have such a great back and forth, and it's definitely one of my favorite things about the show. I thought they were just so well casted here. Now, in terms of the rest of the cast, I really can't say all that much because a lot of them are smaller roles, but I do have to give a shout out to Yeun, who I thought did a very good job as the character of Speckle, who is Bertie's boyfriend in the show. I thought he definitely did a very good job here, and I like what I saw from him. But now I really want to get to the directing for this show because it's important to note going into the show, this is not trying to be BoJack 2.0. And look, that should be obvious, but for me and for others, it's going to be jarring. It really is because this show is a lot weirder and different, and that's one of the reasons I really do love it. The show starts off as a typical sitcom, and you know, it's very similar to BoJack in that way, where it starts off, and there's definitely darkness looming, but it pretty much is a sitcom. The difference is Tuca and Bertie lies much more heavily into the comedy than it does into the drama, and I have to say, most of the comedy hit bullseyes here. It's a very consistently funny show. They do a very good job with that for sure. It's very lighthearted and fun, but the show still has a dose of realism to it. They're not afraid to tackle some very serious issues, and it definitely is very well balanced for the most part. I thought they did a very good job with that. They maintained a very steady tone. If I did have to have one complaint, I think for the first few episodes, it was a little hard to tell, like, what tone they're really trying to, maintain, but once they find their groove, I think it pretty much gets great from there, and I think the directing was very good here. The writing as well very much did impress me, because like I said, one of the things I think the show does very well is it really does take its time. From the beginning, we established that these two used to be roommates together, and Bertie has now moved out, and you can see that while they are still keeping this friendship, you can see how it's also affecting them, and the negative impact it's having on Tuca, the way she's sort of lashing out and things like that, the way she is a lot more desperate, and I thought they did a very good job with telling that story. It's one of those shows where certain things that are played for comedy at first, they get a lot more darker as it goes on, and I really did admire that about this show. Sure, the show is completely ridiculous. I mean, that's something to know right away, is that this show is way more out there and absurd than BoJack. There's literally an episode where one of Tuca's breasts come to life, and there's a character named Booby, and it like talks in full sentences. I'm not even joking, but if you can get behind something like that, I think you'll be able to buy into the show overall. But just know going into it, it is a lot wackier, but even at that, they still do a very good job with exploring some very serious issues. Eventually, the show tackles things like sexism and alcoholism and sexual harassment, and the idea of recovery, the idea of someone who is unemployed, the idea of just someone who is very depressed. I mean, they really do lean into these issues, and for the most part, none of them feel heavy-handed. They feel very well incorporated, and I thought they did a very good job with that overall, and I definitely did like that story. But again, the main focus here is on these two, and the whole show is really contingent upon, do you care about Tuca and Bertie's friendship? And if you do, I think you're going to overall enjoy the show. And luckily, right from the first episode, I did care about their friendship, and they give you a reason to care, and I think overall they definitely did a very good job with that for sure. I really did like where they ended up taking their story, especially in the back half of the season. It gets a lot darker than you're really expecting, but again, because they really do take their time with fleshing out this story, the back half feels that much more satisfying, and they went in some directions that I genuinely was not expecting, and I really did enjoy that. And like I said, both of these characters, they start off and they seem pretty together. They seem like, they're pretty just fun people. But there's a lot of dark emotional baggage that they're both carrying, especially when it comes to Bertie. I mean, there's a lot that she is hiding. There's a lot that we find out later in the season that a lot of her previous choices start to make a lot more sense in that way. And I thought they did a very good job with that. With Tuca, it's a lot more front and center. We pretty much established from the beginning that while Tuca is a lot of fun, she is very damaged and she has a very dark past, and seeing that unravel and seeing what's really happened to these characters, it gets you to not just see them as fun characters that you enjoy because Haddish and Wong do such a great job, but you really do sympathize with them. You understand why they're going through the certain things they are, and I thought they did a very good job with that. And again, it's all thanks to them really fleshing things out as much as possible, and that's something I really did enjoy overall. There's one scene especially with Bertie in the 9th episode that really got me more than I was expecting, and I thought it was so well handled, and it wasn't exactly telegraphed here. Like, this wasn't really something that you could have expected to happen, and I thought that once it was explained, again, something that she does earlier in the season that I was kind of questionable towards, it made a lot more sense to me, and I thought they did a really great job with that. So again, writing for the most part is really great here. I do think they did a very good job with it for the most part. In terms of animation, honestly, I think the show is even more stunning, visually stunning than BoJack, because while BoJack's animation is very specific and it has a very nice look to it, this show plays with different forms of animation quite often. Not only do we get the 2D animation, which looks great, like I said, it really leans into the surreal and absurd, and I think they did a very good job with that, but sometimes they'll go to other animations, like there's There's a portion of the episode that is, puppetry. There's a portion where it might be stop motion. There's a portion where they might just do like, they might go utilize different forms. And I just thought it was a really cool idea the way they did that. And never does it feel jarring. Never does it just feel like they're trying to show off. It feels like there is a point to what they're trying to do. And I thought it was a really cool idea. I really loved how much they leaned into different styles of animation here. And, if this show does get a second season, which I'm pretty sure it will, that's something I'm very excited to see, is what other styles do they plan to tackle? Because I thought that was definitely really great. But the animation, like the general animation, it looks beautiful. It has a very distinctive look and feel to it, and that's something it does very well. Even though the show, from first glance looks like BoJack, it really differentiates itself in a really cool and exciting way that I'm not going to get into right now, but I was very impressed by it overall. So animation I thought was very good here. The score I definitely did enjoy a lot. There's actually quite a few musical numbers in this show, and a lot of them are really great. There's one with Bertie in episode 4 that I absolutely loved. I loved where they ended up going with it. It wasn't something I was expecting, but I thought it was really great, and I thought it made a lot of sense for, what they were trying to say. But I definitely enjoyed that. The editing as well, like I said, this season can be kind of fast-paced at first, but it really does slow down after a while, and I think they did a very good job with that overall. So with all the positive I'm saying, you think this would be a nearly perfect season? Well, no. There are a few things that do hold this season back for me. I will say the first 2 or 3 episodes were hard to get into at first, especially the second one. There are certain things they do with the characters that I do like, but I felt like they happened a little too early on, and I didn't care as much. Once we got to, I'd say, the 4th or 5th episode, that's when I really started to get into the show, and that's when I think it got really great, and pretty much from there, it got better and better as it went on. So here's what I'll say. If you're not really feeling it for the first, 2 or 3 episodes, stick with it, and I think eventually it will convert you, and I think eventually you will become a fan of the show. It takes a little while. Also, as much as I did enjoy what they were trying to do, I would have wanted at least, the one thing I think that would have actually benefited this season is actually to have a flashback episode of seeing these two as roommates, seeing the bond that they had and things like that, because while they do a good job of showing you that, yeah, these two used to be friends, they never really show it, and that's something that, again, if they get a season 2, I do actually really want to see. I want to see them in college. I want to see them when they were at a different time in their life, because I think that would be cool overall. And the only other complaint I do have is the character of Speckle, Steven Yeun. I enjoyed him a lot in this show, but he really doesn't go through much at all narratively. He feels much more like a plot device than a character. The only time he felt like a full-fledged character to me is really in episode 5, when he and Tuca go on this getaway together. That's when he really felt like a full-fledged character. But for the most part, he just felt like Bertie's boyfriend, and that's kind of all he was to me. Still a fun character. I enjoyed him a lot, but I never really felt like, I kind of wanted what they did with, say, Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter, but obviously something different. But if you're looking for something like that, you're not going to get that here, because they do a few things with Speckles and Bertie, but it really isn't the main plot of the show. There really isn't a lot going on there narratively, and that was a little bit. But now, I do want to get into a couple spoilers for this season, so if you haven't seen Tuca and Bertie, I actually would recommend to go away. Watch the season, and then come back and we can discuss it. But the first thing I really want to talk about is some of the revelations we get with Tuca. Now, early on, of course, we know that she's an alcoholic. We know that she had very severe problems. We know that she is clearly trying to recover from it and things like that, and I thought that was a very good story. But what was very surprising is in episode 7, when we actually find out that she once got very bad alcohol poisoning, and the last time, the reason why Bertie is so horrified when she found out that Tuca was in the hospital for that surgery she needed, it's because the last time she saw her, of course, was when she almost died of alcohol poisoning. And I thought that was a really great moment for the show. It was one of those things, like I said, where they take something that is a lot of fun and they actually turn it on its head, and it's a lot more darker and dramatic. And I think even better than that is the revelation when Tuca is in the hospital and she's being told that, she's going to be okay. She doesn't really believe it because the last time she heard those words, her mother was in surgery, and that's how her mother ended up dying. And that was a huge moment for sure. And I really loved the build up to that. It made a lot more sense for Tuca just resisting to go to the hospital early on. It wasn't because she didn't want surgery. It's because she thought that she would die, and she knew what would happen with her mother. And I think they did a very good job with that overall. And then the other thing to talk about is, of course, the stuff with Pastry Pete and Bertie. That was a very interesting arc. So the way it started off in Pastry Pete, he's clearly, sexually abusing her and things like that, but she seems to take it. She seems to be buying into it. She doesn't really see it as abuse, again, because of what he is giving her. He's giving her all of these lavish gifts. He's giving her all these great promotions and things like that. And just in general, she does not see it as abuse because she is getting, her own personal gang. But once it comes to Dakota, that other friend that she encounters, and the same thing happens to her, and she sees the way Dakota reacts, it makes her realize, actually, yeah, it is abuse. And we then later find out that Bertie was actually sexually abused by her, by this swim coach, basically. Not the swim coach, but she was abused by a lifeguard in the pool, and that's why she doesn't swim anymore. And that was another great callback to earlier in the season when, she wasn't swimming. We didn't know what was going on there, but now we know why she doesn't swim. And I love the moment where, Tuca and her, they decide to, Bertie does decide to leave Pastry Pete's, and now she's going to, open up her own sort of bakery, and she ends up doing better than him. I thought that was really great. And then, of course, the ending where Tuca decides that she is going to contact her family and try to get back in touch with them. It's a good direction for her. Tuca's someone who she really hasn't had anyone but Bertie up to this point because her entire family abandoned her. They've made it, they've made a complete mockery out of her. We saw that with her aunts and things like that. They don't like what she's become. But this is her way of really trying to clean herself up and turn her life around. And even though a lot of the season dealt with that recovery, I think next season's going to lean even more heavily into it. And I'm excited to see where they really do go with that overall. But for the most part, Tuca and Bertie Season 1 is very well done. I really like where they ended up taking this first season. There's a lot of fun stuff here for sure. It can get very absurd. It definitely is weirder than BoJack, but it is a different type of show, and it's one that I don't think is comparable to BoJack overall. It's very funny, but it also does lean to some very heavy topics, much more than I really was expecting. And considering the way things end at Season 1, I am very excited to see the way they explore that in Season 2. I think there's a lot of places that they can really take the show. The animation is off the charts. Wong and Haddish do such a great job in their respective roles, and you really do care about these two characters and really the bond that they have throughout the entire season, which I think is just so well done overall. So like I said, I really did enjoy this show, and I am going to give the first season of Tuca and Bertie overall a B+. So overall, guys, in my review of Tuca and Bertie, let me know what you guys saw this season overall. Left your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.